this video is about building a frame perfectly. Ignore the fact that it's a 795 blade, it's just what we work with, but this is how your bike should come when you buy it. First of all, start with a really good frame inspection. Like, all of these should be completely free from paint and everything should fit perfectly. Like, even your bottom bracket should fit in by hand, like hand tight. If those threads are tight, you need to be using facing and cutting tools to sort that all out. This sadly wasn't perfect, so we've gone around with a ceramic knife. These work brilliantly at just scraping off, bits of paint and stuff. So don't start anything until you're happy that the frame is absolutely perfect, that all the bearings fit properly. So on the fork, that should all just be a perfect fit. Anything is not right, don't start building. Get everything right first. A bit like decorating your house. Everything is in the preparation, even though it's the boring part. Whoa, 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 I know what you're thinking. A look with poor quality issues. What the hell is going on? Yep, trying to be transparent here. If we see paint issues and quality issues from brands that we love, we're still going to call them out on this channel. So this frame actually has a bit of a backstory to it. We actually ordered one. It got lost in the post. Poor customers waiting forever. There's hardly any look stock. This one actually is part of the Team Cofidis allocation. So I presume that frame went to Team Cofidis, came back to the Look warehousing where I was assured that it had been QC'd before it came to us. They obviously missed some bits and pieces, but ultimately this comes down to the dealer's responsibility. It is my strongly held belief that dealers hold the ultimate responsibility for making sure that you get the bike to you in perfect condition. So there we go. Anyway, some of the tools that you've just seen me use here, good old bit of Scotch right here. We buy it in big sheets and this is great for just like fine detail finishing. A sanding block, pretty essential. Use a whole load of different grits, 180 to sort of get the most of the paint off and then just go through the grits. If you're going to be working with carbon, a respirator, gloves. And then some other bits you saw us use is T47. This is a chaser, just to chase threads. It doesn't cut threads. It's not a proper tap. It's just there to clean paint and sort of debris out. And then obviously a face cutting tool as well. This is an excellent tool, comes all in one. And then you saw me use some frame taps. So if you're using axles, weirdly, you're going to need a 12 by 1mm thread pitch. That's actually quite a hard one to get hold of. And then there's a 12 by 1.75 and a 12.15, so 3 different thread pitches in the cycling industry. We also keep ones for the front brake mounts as well, M4. And then you saw me use a ceramic knife, little tip that we picked up from the Time QC. We went out to their factory. This is made by a company called Noga. Absolutely fantastic because you can't really dig into the carbon. If you use a normal knife, the risk is digging into the carbon and gouging it, whereas this is actually really quite friendly. It just sort of takes a layer of paint off. Hard to cut yourself with it as well, so excellent for doing that sort of work. So back to the video. Next up, get the manual. There's more stuff in here than just, torque settings and stuff. There's going to be loads in here. One, have you actually got every single component? Like, modern bikes now have so many parts for Garmin mounts, different sections for mounting handlebars and compression rings, just tons. So make sure you have everything. You also get the actual instructions of where to put the Di2 battery, how to route the cables, sometimes even very specific instructions as to how long those cables can be so that your handlebars rotate. So get the instructions, print them out, have them in front of you, refer to them. That way you can't be lazy about it and try and guess it. The worst thing you can do when you're dealing with a £5,000 bike is guess anything. Just go back to the instructions. It'll also tell you normally what greases to use, especially because some of these plastic parts might be quite sensitive to certain types of greases. So if it says a certain type of grease, again, don't guess, go by the instructions. This one particularly has lots of titanium parts, so it's quite specific as to what you should use. Now, the biggest thing with modern bikes is all about headsets, and it's becoming an absolute minefield. There's basically 3 major systems. There's the token system, the FSA system, and the data system, and then there's all sorts of proprietary systems outside of that. Look actually use the token system, and hallelujah, look at this. Token have just announced a new 4-in-1 integrated kit. So you have a token bearing and you get all of the compression bungs. I'm trying to get one of these on for review as soon as I can, for token Acros, which is Canyon basically, data and FSA, so you can fit all sorts of things. Look have actually just announced a new adapter so that you can just fit the LS3 stem. So that would be the top cap, that would be your little mount, and then you've got your generic stem sits there. So that's great. You can buy that separately, which means you can now buy the frame without any sort of handlebar, which is a bit of a shame because the best part about this bike is the handlebar. But if it doesn't work for you, or the price, which to be fair is a bit crazy, is a bit too much, then you can just get access to this frame and work out your own fit with stuff. So look, aren't many people doing that. Loads more brands are becoming much more open-minded to lots of options, but you are going to need to really get into the technical drawings and make sure everything is perfect. First thing we're going to do is run the brake hose, and even though frames come with their own super lightweight frame protection, this really doesn't do a very good job of dampening noise. So we buy this stuff by the meter, and we're going to want to go from the bottom bracket all the way up to about here. Don't be tempted to go longer than this because it will interfere with the bottom bracket, and if you go longer here it will just start rubbing, so keep your work area clean. So you might have guessed we're fitting some SRAM Red goodness today. So one of the cool things with SRAM actually, which I wish Shimano did, one, it actually comes supplied with the mounting bracket, and it comes supplied with a couple of different bolts as well. And in here you should find everything you need. So got brake separator tool and the bleed tool in there, bit of excess plastic, but you also have the olive, the barb, and the tiny little Torx key you need to do that up. So they all go in a nice safe spot and a magnetic tray. That all goes in the bin. Now the annoying thing about SRAM is that you do have to go backwards to go forward, so you are going to have to disconnect everything, sadly. So when we undo this, this is going to leak dot fluid everywhere. So gloves, bit of blue roll, and we use a flare wrench which actually just has 5 sides for this. Now on SRAM levers, the lever side has got a valve on it, so it won't leak from the valve side, but it will leak from this side. So I'm just pulling these out of the way so I don't get brake fluid anywhere. I'm expecting it to come out of here, but it shouldn't come out of the lever. And we're going to use these little pumpkins, the little rubber silicone things, probably just on the back, because it stops any chance of this brake hose bobbling. You see I've still got my little bit of blue roll, so if I do still see this leak I can just wipe it quickly. I don't tend to use too much in the way of internal frame guides unless I have to. Most of the time I think you can just do it by feel. These frames actually have a complete one-piece T47 bottom bracket, so there's actually a whole metal tube essentially pushed in there with these cutout sections, and we're trying to stuff it properly into the down tube. So I'm just going to use my fingers to hold it there whilst we just pull the rest of this through. Okay, so you should have 2 sets of bolts and 2 washers, so we need to make sure we're using a bolt that is going to go through the frame and actually penetrate the thing. So this one too short, this one just right, and SRAM use T25 for these. What we're going to do is just twist this in a way that all the cable stays nice and neat. And now you can see what this little pumpkin does, just prevents any vibration of that knocking against the frame. When you spend this much money on a bike, like having any sort of vibration or rattle, it's going to wind you up. The front brake is just the same, but you actually get loads more bolts. We probably just want these 2 short ones here. Get rid of your rubbish. Right, next up is the headset. Now we are going to be building this bike as if we're going to do a bike fit on it. So we're not going to cut the steerer just now. We need to build it so the customer can ride it on a turbo trainer, do the bike fit, and then we have to come back in here, do some deconstruction, cut the steerer. So this is just how you would do that at home, because you really should do if you're home building, is make sure that you're 110% happy with everything before you cut. So with this, we are going to get some grease, and the way to do this without getting all your hands really dirty is 1, grease the seat here and pop your bearing on, and then I'm just going to tape again. This is really to stop anything vibrating, keep everything super tight. So then this is all a bit of a hold it up in the air operation, so just make sure you've got all of your component parts. So we have our compression ring. Like, love this, just look how wide and thick that is with a big chamfer on it. So once we actually push down on this and close this gap, this is going to really grip the steerer. Fantastic, love that. This is the top gap for the blade that works with the special handlebar, and that's one for the token system. So that's that adapter that we were talking about earlier. In the instructions here it says we're allowed up to 5 centimeters. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 5s. I do not think this customer will need it, but we set that up with the maximum, and then we bike fit down from there. And then we have, most bike brands will do this actually. There'll be an aero top cap, and then there'll be a fitting top cap so that you can then put stacks on top of this. Looks a bit ugly, but it will allow you to get your position before you need to cut anything. So just at this point here, think about what side you want your brakes to come out of. So here in the UK, we want our rear brake to be on the left hand side. While I'm doing this bit, some of you might be asking, why doesn't Mapdeck use one of those fancy silk, I think they're called Harry bells, those things where you strap to your frame and then you basically put that part, and I'll put some pictures up. Reason is I had one before, it was an absolute nightmare, it caused way more problems. These seat posts are designed for a 130 kilo rider to sit on them. They're also really cheap, so God forbid I did damage it, replacing a seat post, no big deal. The problem with those Harry bells is they clamp onto the paintwork, and if you use something like here, like I've got a paper towel, it just slides around, so you end up with a bit holding the paintwork here and a bit holding the paintwork here. That's just sort of working on the bike. You just get loads of little micro scratches and stuff. So always found them to cause more damage than they claim to solve. So this is how we do it. We put the seat post in absolutely first. We use something in there to protect it. There is something quite satisfying about putting a big stack of spacers on, and then when someone comes for their bike fit, you slowly start removing them and the bike looks better and better. The reason I like doing 5 spacers and doing the maximum is to really sort of let the customer know this is the maximum, it's not going any higher than this, because you can see it's really tempting that you get loads of steerer tube left, like you can build up more, but you can't, and you really wouldn't want more than 5 anyway, you just get loads of flex. So at this point here it should be fairly obvious which is the rear brake and which is the front. If it isn't, feel free to start labeling them or something. We've still got a bit of cable routing to do though, but it's important to get that bit right. And here we can just check that everything is moving, and you shouldn't hear anything on the inside, like you shouldn't hear a cable like click over or anything. That should just be smooth. So next up we've got our stem. I hate it when the brands put this stuff in because I just pull it straight out again. I just think this stuff just causes more problems than it's worth. So again, when Look first launched this bike, you were pretty much stuck with one shape, but now you can get pretty much any stem and bar combination you like. So I do like this. I think this is going to be the future where you can, it's still an aero integrated cockpit, but you can still swap out various bits. Top tip doing this is like work with the curve, so you can see how this has already got an automatic curve. Don't try and fight against it, just get everything set up so that the curve is going to work to your advantage. So you can see this clamp here, again, not completely unique to Look. Loads of bike brands are doing something similar to this now, where you actually use 2 clamping plates and 3 bolts. They're all using titanium fixtures, so you've got to be really careful with the torque settings. But also, I'll show you in the final assembly how you've got to be sure that all of these 3 come up to torque equally. You can't just do one up to 8 and then the next one. So at this point here, we can swing this around, and you can sort of see, well, like when I'm working on it, just how much things like move. And if you have one of those Haribel things, it just creates loads of scratches. So with these handlebars, and quite a lot like it, you'll see there's 2 exit ports here. You get a higher position and a lower position. So if I offer up a lever, what we're doing here is trying to find the one that looks the smoothest. So we want to mount our levers about there. Coming out the exit point here, this is going to have to sort of dive down into that. The lower one going to come out and into here. Now, looking at the instructions, it actually says for a Shimano build, we recommend the routing of the lower holes, and for a SRAM through the upper holes. I suspect that this is probably for the older SRAMs. When they brought this out, the SRAM E1 hadn't been launched. I am going to go for the lower hole because I want to avoid that kink. Bit of an explanation here. So what's going to happen in the bike fit is that once we've finished it and we determine where this is going to be cut, we probably won't drop this down again. We'll probably remove some spacers, hold everything in the bike stand really steady, put a jig on this and then cut it while everything's pretty much in situ. Just go nice and steady at it, protect all the paintwork, and therefore we don't have to do all the rerouting again. So otherwise the customer will be waiting like 4 hours for the end of their build. This is pretty much as far as we go, but we won't connect the brake hoses up, you know, just in case we need to drop everything again. So essentially all the customer needs to do on their collection day is get the bike fit, determine this, maybe swap the stem out if we have to, bleed the brakes, finishing everything off. Now this, oh, I love this. So I've featured it on the channel before, so I won't labour the point, but this whole handlebar uses proprietary titanium hardware, just really nicely made. It's a joy to build. And this does actually have different length bolts if you're going to fit a computer mount as well. So knowing this customer, I'm fairly confident that we can just go straight in with the computer mount. So the computer mount uses the silver titanium ones, so we don't need 2 of those or 2 of those. We just need those. They're all on a T27, 6 Newton meters. All this is going to be loose assembly for now. So this is our little bits. We've got a right and a left So at this point, again, we're just doing very, very dry assembly, waiting for the bike fit. But these compression bungs which go in here, they very rarely come greased, but it's thread in there is definitely worth greasing, because this is one part of the bike which is constantly getting wet with rainwater, with sweat, and they corrode really bad. I mean, the same will go for this bolt for now. I know that I have to do more work on this in the bike fit, so that's just going to sit like that for now. So next up, let's get these levers on. The best tool for doing this is a really long bit so you can get underneath the hood mounts. If you try and do this with a short one, you just end up stripping this bolt. So don't go too tight. I'm just going to hold that in position. The biggest motivation for this is because I want to get these rubbers peeled back so we don't end up with a crease line. These shouldn't take any real effort to put on, so don't go forcing them and scratching your bars up. Customer's going to want to ride this, and right now we've got brake hoses in the way, so I'm just going to masking tape those out of the way. If you can just cover up the end just in case. Next up, bottom bracket. Going for a standard Bocconi steel bottom bracket, using a construction grease for this. We used to use the Maxima, we couldn't get hold of it anymore, so we are experimenting with something else. I think this is a Morgan Blue. Can't say I'm particularly happy with it. It's basically the same idea, so it's a calcium sulfonate base, and this is really about anti-gouling, anti-corrosion. This isn't about lubrication. Now with Bocconi stuff, remember there is actually an O-ring here, so we're just going to grease inside there, and we know the threads are okay, but there is actually an O-ring seal as well. So the tools we use here is, we're a torque wrench, big long lever, love this, 1/2 inch head, and then the ice tools is the M099 for specifically for this reason. Now with this torque wrench, you need to make sure that you turn the head around for the reverse thread. Very, very shallow. And this is why I like it, because I can use my hands to control this and keep it engaged. There we go, job done. Always dial off the tension on your torque wrench, put your tools away. Look at that, does look good. So we're on T47, 86.5 on a road, and we are 0 spacer, and we are 3mm spacer on the right hand side. Back the preload off. This already has the same grease that we use actually. This blue grease is the same mobile grease as we use in the shop. And you'll normally find when they're brand new as well, they use the right grease in there. If they haven't, go and look it up, use the right grease. Now keep an eye on the preload as you do this bolt up, because if for whatever reason you have got that spacer configuration wrong, it'll bind up and potentially damage the bearing. So I always just like to sort of keep it moving in my hands, so that I know if I have put the wrong spacers in, I'm not just about to clamp up the bearings. Should be able to get quite a long way with the torque just with your hand and a good Allen key. We're looking good at the moment, and a little bit of movement there. Nothing we can't dial out with the preload bolt. Dial in a sickening amount of torque, and we don't want to put any weight pressure on the frame here really. If you're not strong enough to do that, the best thing to do is wait until you get all the wheels on and get everything on the floor, and then you get a bit more leverage. So, and then just bring the preload on. Perfect little tool for this. This is a little Wera 2mm screwdriver, and this is a plastic, like it's a self-tap-in screw into plastics. This is like literally 1 Newton-meter. Stop that moving. Happy days. Okay, next up we've got to put a little mech hanger on, get some mechs on, and then we can get our wheels in. So we have mech hanger here. The bolt is actually pre-thread locked. There's no harm here, just for a little bit of anti-corrosion, just putting a thin smear of grease across these surfaces. Okay, time for our mechs. Now's a good chance to get the batteries on charge. A little bit of construction grease. Again, it doesn't really matter if you use a different type of grease, this is just the best thing to use. SRAM Red actually have 2 mounting bolts, so normally you want the upper one, except if you go for the really big sort of pro level chain rings, you might need to use the lower hole. And then essentially this is a case of lining up the white lines. And when we're done, I should be able to just come back in and insert our wedge, and we're good. Time to do the wheels. Now we are going for a bit more eerie research stuff, because bloody loving these wheels at the moment. They are super good. £1,499 carbon spokes, get all the spare parts, and you can get them on their website. Now, one of the reasons is, like, becking out a bike these days is getting harder and harder. We're going to make a whole video about it actually, but generally speaking, a lot of your decisions that you've seen here have already been taken. You know, you bought the frame, then you've got to make all the decisions around the finishing kit, and then the group set all has to be integrated through your frame. So sometimes you've got to sort of squeeze your budget with what's left. And this, you get a fantastic lightweight and stiff wheel for not a great deal of money. And they're great 23mm internals, a very aggressive hook on them, branded carbon spokes, all the spares you could ever want, straight out of Holland as well. So all the right European consumer rights, etc. Just tick, tick, tick really. So now we are going to be fitting these with some pretty light tyres as well. So we're going for Continental Archetypes. This customer is still a little bit unsure about 30mm. So we're going to keep the boxes just in case we need to put them back, and we're going to be fitting them with tubes for now, so it's going to be a bit easier for them to deal with it. I want to try them first. Now these wheels do come with valves as well, but they're not fitted, so you can just fit straight away. So we're mounting these back on. I've just lifted the valve up slightly to make sure that the inner tube goes actually into the tyre. You need to resort to a tyre lever. Just go a little bit at a time. You're never going for that big dramatic all in one go, and really you're just trying to help it in. So you should just, there we go. If anyone's wondering after watching Peak Talk recently, little bleed hole there. To be fair, it's pretty standard these days. I think it was Envy who really started having that problem, possibly maybe Mavic as well. When the chamber was inflating, it's probably been solved now for at least a decade, I'd imagine. In fact, while I'm doing this, probably have a little chat about some look updates, because we haven't really featured look on the channel for a long time. The reason for that is I've had no stock. Like the 785 just sold out, and loads of you have been emailing us about it, but the reality is they just haven't got any. They don't actually have any until almost the middle of next year. So it's really hard, you know, once you made a decision and want to buy a new bike and you sort of get in contact with us and we're like, can't get one for 12 months, it's ridiculous. So they do have their bikes in stock, but in all honesty, they're so overpriced, hard to justify it really. I mean, a bit of that is because, you know, Ultegra group sets are so cheap right now that it's way cheaper to custom build. Same goes for this 795. These are only just coming back into stock, and now actually look are leaning into their Art of Cycling slogan. So we saw at Roulette last year, they did that collab with the street artist. They've now released that paint scheme as a bike for £10,000 for a frame set, mind, but very limited edition, hand painted. And they're going to be doing much more little limited edition releases, new paint schemes. There's some really cool stuff coming. Hopefully we have to show you at the Roulette show. So that's, I think you're going to be seeing that a lot from, well, a lot of the European brands who, you know, have their design offices in Europe, but do a lot of their manufacturing in Taiwan, China, etc. A few things really to give them a point of difference. Other sort of tax and Brexit reasons as well about painting in country and building in country, which you're seeing more and more of. And now you've got the configurator as well. So something that I've been talking about for ages, that it's about time that bike brands gave us the chance to specify handlebars and stems and everything else, because, you know, off the shelf bikes are never right. So Look and Villiers and a few other brands as well are now having an online configurator and a dealer configurator. So if you ordered a bike through a dealer, theoretically you could configure it, you know, from spec. In all honesty, for us, we still see a massive value in custom building financially and getting the bike that you want right from the get-go. I don't think it's something that we'll be doing, but it's nice to see that the industry is moving in that direction. It is crazy when you think about the prices, because the 795 blade, which you can now get, you know, without the whole handlebars, is still a £4,800 frame. If you factor in the handlebars, they're almost another £800, so you could dial that out and make those decisions. But if you add a Ultegra group set and the bottom of the line sort of spec wheels from Look, which are, in all honesty, they're gap fillers, you know, they're a generic carbon rim, steel spokes and a DT Swiss 370 hub, really nothing special. So they're probably at least £1,000, maybe £1,500 overpriced if you get a fully built bike, and you still don't get exactly what you want. So for us, custom building from a frame is very much what we're all about, and long may that continue. I think it really is that your local bike shop should be giving you that value of, like, you know, what saddle do you want? You notice we haven't fitted a saddle here. We're going to try several different saddles when this rider is here, and he'll go home with whatever feels right in that bike fit. Always worth a quick sanity check on the pressures. We are max 4 TC. Remember, TC tubeless crotchet and TSS is for tubeless straight side. So we are at a max of 73. We've got our NV station here set on a sort of a 70 PSI shortcut. That is what the Genus 2, these are the R version, which is the 23mm internal with the 30mm on. So optimized really around a 28-30mm works really well. With disc rotors, one thing to remember is don't touch the metal bit. Just try and be really careful not to touch that bit and go on there. And with SRAM, you normally get two different types, but I've ordered the wrong ones here. So these are for the external lock ring type, which is the wrong type. I'm actually going to need a internal one like that for the front, otherwise this will end up hitting the rotor. So this is from Jaguar, and one of the reasons we like using these is because it actually brush into the threads. You just don't end up with a big dollop. SRAM Red Cassette, thing of absolute beauty. Now these do come pre-greased, but they all seem to be a little bit on the lean side, so I'm going to add a bit more to those threads. And guess what? Tidy up your workstation. Okay, next up we have got a SRAM Red chain, which has just come out of waxing. Try and get rid of the majority of the wax, because you know when you do the bike fit you'll still get little bits of chips of wax going everywhere, but it's at least nice to get rid of most of it. Waxing change is actually pretty popular now. In fact, quite a lot of our custom builds customers ask for it from scratch. I'm thinking of this summer starting up waxing Wednesdays, which is when we'll have just the crock pot on, hot wax all ready to go. And if you've got a wax chain, just pop in, take your chain off, pop it through the waxing machine, send you on your merry way while you wait, because half the challenge of like doing chain waxing is really all the, you know, waiting for the wax to heat up and do it just the right temperature. And every Wednesday we'll aim to have the pot of wax up and running, so you can, quick 5-minute job is to pull the chain off, re-wax it, pop it back on. So I think we just need to remove one link. Don't really go in for exotic chain tools because they do wear out quite quickly. So these sort of things work great, as you've just seen. There it is. And then once you're happy, it's sort of up here. Just grab hold of the wheel and then just click it into place. You can see loads of little chips will just come off. Just quickly set low limit. So if you don't have that little fancy tool, there's actually a good little hack here. So down here you should see there's like a little indentation in the plate here, and you want those teeth to be in beside that indentation. Roughly speaking, it's about a 3mm gap between the teeth here, and then this little white line here should line up with the teeth on the inner chainring. So with that in mind, I'm just going to adjust this yaw ever so slightly. And we're just looking for like a 0.5mm gap between the chain and the plate, essentially, so nothing rubs. So once you're happy that it's in the outer chainring, make sure it's also in the bottom, because it won't let you go into that ring until everything's set, and then you can safely set your high limit screw. And again, sometimes you're going to need to come down really low and actually look at the gap here and just check that in. So you're 0.5mm or not rubbing. And if all going well, you should be able to shift with confidence. Top mechanics tip, you can obviously change the front gear by using that button, and with SRAM, if you double press the rear mech, it will shift down, and if you just single press, it will come back down, so you're not always having to go back to the levers. Nice little feature. And we are about ready for our bike fit. Now, one thing that's really, really important to me is just gathering up all of the parts to make sure the customer goes away with everything, and we've got everything. So we have little top cap, we have the spokes. These are all the battery covers. This is the stem top cap. Very important is the warranty registration card. And then here we have the bounce you need for a Wahoo or a Brighton, and then all the various screws. So we've got our kit here for bleeding the brakes, all our barbs, have extra little bungs here. We've got a seat post bung, which we'll put in there. All that goes somewhere safe. Bits we don't need, like this is for mounting the Di2 battery. If you mount a Di2 battery, we'll keep all that just in case they decide to change group sets. All of this sort of stuff I like to give to the customer as well. So we'll get all that in a little bag alongside a copy of the manual. Now it's time to put this to one side, ready for bike fit day. Here we go, ready for collection day. One thing that we really insist on is you come to Mapdeck for the big collection day, get everything absolutely fitted and come away from here 100% happy. We do very, very rarely ship bikes out with a courier service, and every now and then it has been known that I've flown out to a foreign location with a bike in a box and set it up at someone's house. That comes with a big price tag, but it is all possible. For most people, they come here and enjoy the whole Mapdeck fit experience, and this is what your bike will look like on fit day. There'll be no saddle on it. We'll choose a saddle together collaboratively, make sure you're absolutely totally happy with that. We'll obviously work through all the finer fit details. If we have to, we'll change cranks. Hopefully we've done most of that work before we get to this stage. And we'll definitely be working our way through the stack of spaces here, getting that fit absolutely optimum, maybe changing out a stem. Ultimately, when you're absolutely 100% happy, we'll send you away for your lunch. We'll take a hacksaw to this, get all that smoothed off, and then crucially we will work on the brake hoses. This is something that's so important to me because brake hoses rattle, they move, they impede your steering, and what we're trying to get is the brake hoses exactly the right length that the steering is completely unimpeded. Nothing's making any noise in there, there's nothing rattling around or touching on the inside of the steerer. But also, if we do need to service your headset, we can take this off, drop the fork enough to at least clean things out. And ultimately, if you do need servicing, hopefully you don't have to change the brake hoses because we have to cut the brake hoses to service the headsets, is that you get a couple of cuts in there before you need to replace your brake hoses as well. That's the ultimate aim. Our bike fitting setup, keep it relatively simple. This rollers from Wahoo is absolutely brilliant. It's so good for saddle fitting because you get a much more natural movement in the bike. Absolutely brilliant. We do have the Wahoo kicker bike as well when we need to do static fits. That's really, really adjustable, and we can take the handlebars off dead easy and change saddles out. Brilliant. And then I really like using just the slow motion cameras. So we have a camcorder permanently set up, and we use a software called Kinevera, which you can overlay a big grid on. We can get the axles completely lined up, horizontal, vertical line going through the bottom bracket, and I can overlay loads of details so we can measure angles, we can measure heights, all sorts of stuff on that. Great thing is we get a record of the whole bike fitting journey. So every time we do something, we take a recording and we get you off the bike and we talk through the changes that we're about to make together. Has that improved things? Has it made it worse? All those sort of things. And we do actually have a spare camcorder which is set up on a tripod. That's great for getting the front, so we can have a look at the slow motion, knee alignment. We can move this around. We can look at like the total frontal area, whole bunch of stuff you can do with slow motion cameras. Big fan. Do need to be quite good, 60 frames a second at least with some good lighting to make that happen. So there we go, there's our setup. That is the entire Mapdeck custom build experience. If you want to find out more, all those links are down in the description. This bike, if you want to know, if you use the Look configurator, came out at least £1,000 cheaper with significantly better wheels and tyres than the Look configurator. So that's a win for independent bike shops in my view. So yeah, all that said, if you like this video, please think about subscribing, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you soon on the next one, probably a bit of a shorter video. Cheers.